baby. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner. The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
WESN.
For every creed and race to find an equal place, we must look beyond color. And that is one of the messages coming out of Holy Week. Coming into this holy period from Archbishop Jason Gordon. Now, in his message, he was saying that there is no place for creed and race in Christ's passion. And perhaps that could be a lesson to all of us with regards to our general elections. There's still mumblings and murmurings about race. Some people will say, well, it's not necessarily about creed and race, it's about classism. One article, one political analyst at least alludes to that or said that. Ultimately speaking, though, I think we have to get rid of tribalism. And to some extent, this is where even religious tribalism needs to not have a place. Not saying that you can't be a believer in whatever faith you want to believe. But ultimately speaking, as much as possible, we have to acknowledge the fact that there will always be people in one's country that are different from you. They live in a different area than you. They'll be of a different race than you. They'll have a different color and skin tone than you. In some cases, even if you're in the same race. They'll have different beliefs to you, not just religious, but political, with regards to how to fix problems. We'll have disagreements. But as challenges get tougher, and as the mountain grows, we still have to scale it. And it's easier to do it as a team together, regardless of our differences, than it would be if we tried to scale the mountain alone. And in fact, one of the things that I guess you could say child psychology and early childhood education and child development is starting to become more and more part of public discourse. One aspect is the fact that there's some observations that the more you coddle your children, and arguably an observation can be made that certain generations, certain recent generations were more coddled than others because the parents went through certain things and they didn't want their kids to have to go through the same things, which is fine, only to turn around and once they start to reach young adulthood, they were less equipped to deal with certain challenges of the real world. We can't try to mask things and downplay things. We need to learn how to come together. And learning how to come together is going to force us to have to deal with our disagreements, to get out of our comfort zone, because your ultimate comfort zone is when no one disagrees with you and everything is in line with how you like it. But that isn't always the best thing. And a lot of people reach into later adulthood not understanding that their discomfort and anxiety does not necessarily mean it's wrong. It just means that they are not in their comfort zone. And that's not always a bad thing, because there's no actual logical reason behind why they disagree with it, just they don't like it so. And if we fall into that trap where we are uncomfortable, so then we think it must be wrong, not that we're just unaccustomed and, dare I say, too sensitive, then it'll be difficult to come together, because coming together involves compromise. It involves, at least in the beginning, being uncomfortable. It involves having to face certain challenges. But the rewards after going through the exercise, not only do you have the reward of, and then we come together and all work together, and assuming we could collaborate well, we are greater than the sum of our parts, but then in future, we have exercised the muscles required in order to allow us to engage with others in a constructive way, and it'll be easier the next time. And that's what, to some extent, a lot of current young adults are having issues with. They have not been exercising certain mental and emotional muscles from young, and now their coddled energy is incapable of dealing with when life throws challenges you can't just walk away from. Well, we can't walk away from this, because unfortunately this is us. Things like an election, issues with our country, it is us. It is not just our home. It is but our society. Now, a couple other quick hit things I want to get through. One interesting, I don't know, it was making me rounds on social media. I'm not that well connected in local social media. The algorithm is not going to recommend me a lot, but it does at times. And one of the things it did is it showed certain examples of AI in the current election campaign. Most of it visual, or there's a trick when you take video and you kind of blend it together. A lot of it was basically political opponents in the same sort of picture or video showing things that didn't really happen, right? At least we don't think so. One of the things, though, is that my concern with AI is the fact that, well, there will be a lot of confusion over what is and is not, what is reality and what is fake. One of the things that one report says is not fake, according to certain individuals within technological fields, is the recording between Farley Augustine and Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. Now, there are different ways to look at it, and usually there are tells with regards to manufactured versus reality, particularly with audio, because audio, the human voice responds a certain way, and then computers probably will have a certain level of crispness and a certain level of consistency in an audio file that it just won't be human. And usually this is also how you could tell when someone is using auto-tune on their voice on an internet performance, quote unquote. That's just one thing from my knowledge that could be readily applicable. Of course, with regards to video, usually there are times when the video might have certain tells and glitches, but I guess for elections, if it's video, you're not going to release something that has an obvious flaw. Now, the thing is, I don't know to what extent we should just accept, oh, it's fake news and it's AI or something like this. The flip side to that is, I think, at least, I don't know how, I can't tell Tobagonians how to feel about it. But to me, it made sense that at the least, right, maybe you don't like exactly what was said and how they said it, but I see nothing wrong with Farley Augustine engaging with the UNC. Now, that doesn't mean that there will be a version where whatever arrangement they have in place, maybe it goes too far, and I think it would be a mistake, but that's my opinion. But generally speaking, and this is not the same as his explanation for the previous AudioGate scandal where you have to explore all options, because the option he was exploring wasn't a good one. I've gone over that already, not going to go into that right now. In this case, it's fairly obvious. If they win 1 or 2 seats, they are going to have to potentially, unless one side not necessarily wins by a landslide, but the margin is so great that 2 seats are not going to make a difference, which recent history in general elections has shown we shouldn't necessarily expect that or think that will happen. Therefore, Farley Augustine will have a choice to make as political leader of the TPP. If his 2 votes might be required for a majority to form a government, who will he go to? And to be honest, personally, I would see nothing wrong with him talking to both the UNC and the PNM, and if necessary, the NTA. But the low-hanging, obvious fruit in this situation is him talking to the UNC, because the PNM are technically his direct political opponents in Tobago. So one could argue if he talked to the PNM, it might potentially look worse. But that said, ultimately speaking, he needs to engage with Trinidadian political parties if he wants to achieve his objectives. Why are we going to admonish him for laying some of the groundwork early? Now again, what was said, how it was framed, the language, was it language that this was concrete exactly what it was going to be, or were they feeling each other out? I don't know, right? At the end of the day, sometimes when you're engaging with people, you're kind of presenting a neutral version of yourself in order to feel things out. So we have to wait and see on that. But the flip side is, the one caveat I have to say is, if Tobagonians want to respond a certain way, whether positively or negatively, I get it. It is what it is. And this is probably why they didn't want the conversations to be revealed. And usually certain sensitive discussions, you don't necessarily want it to be revealed. But the trick is, now that it's revealed, dare I say, by being defensive, you're committing and saying it's fake. If it's not fake, you're committing the same mistake the PNM did over Dragon, where you're being so defensive over it, people are going to start to look at you as though you're acting suspicious. Just a little bit of advice. Now, one of the things that I found interesting is the UNC is taking the angle that Dr. Keith Rowley has returned. That shows the PNM's desperation, and I kind of find that take, that opinion, kind of laughable, to be honest, from my perspective. Because my thought was, he is still the political leader of the PNM. They went through this whole exercise to justify making Stuart Young Prime Minister and to justify having him as the front man of the election campaign, Dr. Rawley had to remain political leader of the PNM. If he didn't come out to campaign even once, it would have made that whole situation a complete farce. It would have made it, in my opinion, even worse, because what you're saying is we completely game the system. We completely game the system because Dr. Rawley retained the position of political leader just to run cover for Stuart Young. We're not even going to pretend that he had anything to do with the party other than that. And Stuart Young basically was leader by default, de facto, but leader without a vote. Granted, to some extent, one could say on all practical levels, that's the situation that's going on. But my point is, optically, if Dr. Rawley does not participate in this election campaign, it just makes that look all the more real. As opposed to the political leader of the PNM comes out and remind people, hey, I'm still the political leader of the PNM. And more importantly, I mean, people wanted Obama to campaign for Biden, right? Why can't Dr. Rawley campaign for his successor? So that's the thing. I actually thought it would have been worse if he didn't. Because then, not only are they kind of giving us a dog and pony show where they're making it as obvious as possible, as opposed to not so obvious, but we still know what the truth is, that this is a forced situation, right? To borrow a magician's term. They're forcing. We didn't select Stuart Young. We thought, it's making it when they say pick a card, any card. Just watch a Penn and Teller episode. If it's 3 of clubs, that wasn't a free choice, it was forced. That's one of their inside tells that they reveal to the public. Anyway, it would have been even worse. Not only because of that, but also because of the fact that he's not even going to help the man on the campaign trail. Dr. Rawley is going to just abandon the whole ship, walk away, and say, you know, sing his kumbayas and enjoy his retirement. So this is, to me, is somebody in the opposition saying, kind of getting a little too excited over something they think they could talk about, and it's not really that pertinent to me. What do you expect? It's low-hanging fruit that Dr. Rawley would campaign for the PNM. The UNC brought out former people from, I think, well, from the PNM especially so, but also from the partnership, who I don't believe are part of the government. Maybe they would be in a different capacity, I don't know. Last thing I want to say quick, there's an article a couple days old. When I saw it, I found it kind of, I think it's strategically a mistake. The NT apparently is focusing its election on the UNC and not the PNM. And the reason why I think that's a mistake is there was not too long ago an accusation that 2 parties, the Patriotic Front and the NTA, were basically financed by the PNM to split votes. And I don't necessarily believe that, at least not about the NTA. Need more evidence for things like that. Otherwise, this cry wolf situation is just going to get worse, right? We're only going to believe you without evidence for so many things. But when the political leader of the NTA then turns around and says, you know, he can't convince PNM till I die voters, so he's going to switch gears to the UNC and focus on them and try to take votes from them, it just kind of, you know, it writes itself almost. Then it gives credence to the opposition's accusation, regardless of the reality. It supports their claim. Also, I think to some extent it's a strategic mistake, because you could say that you can't convince PNM voters because they are PNM till I die voters, but not every voter is a PNM till I die voter. Yeah, that's the base. So number one, there might be some people who support the PNM more than the UNC, but based on how it's reported or what you said, they might say, oh, well, you're not for me, well, I'm not for you. More importantly, you can never know when a die-hard supporter might want to switch their allegiance. And conversions like that tend to be some of the strongest some of the most unshakable once the change was made because the loyalty is transferred. But you kind of give up all possibilities of that as well. And then it could potentially also have a trickle-down effect on undecided or moderate voters who are in the middle, who kind of looking at the situation and it looking funny. Because it's not, it's an unnecessary thing to say at the end of the day. I don't really see the gains, which again, that helps lend credence to the UNC's accusation, regardless of whether it's true or not. I only see downsides, but that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. You could call in and tell me what I was wrong. Right, so let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue on with the daily review. We have the top of the story. Yes, it's going to be from the political trail, but it's with regards to the crime plans, because I guess the debate on the dueling platforms, in a way, has evolved, but not really by that much. Stay tuned. This is Talking About an WESN show. Michael Small. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Claudette, radiographer at the radiology departments at the community hospital. We offer high-quality service with state-of-the-art equipment in X-ray, ultrasound, CT, and mammogram. Come, our friendly staff awaits you.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas, and Movie Town, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
So, one of the issues for this election is crime. And to be honest, I will say I am not that impressed overall by the proposals by just about everybody, but mainly by the PNM-UNC, right? I don't think we got concrete proposals from Gary Griffith, but the implication is he'll just kind of continue with his style, which debatably they have at least some good points. And some will argue there are some bad points, but at least with Guy Griffith, we have a track record that we could fall back on. Now, with regards to the dueling debates, I don't necessarily think it's as bad as the economic side of the equation, because on some level, both parties, they are on different wavelengths, or they're coming at it from different perspectives. But with regards to crime, of course, we have the government and the opposition, and they're kind of similar, but they're not. Now, with regards to the government, the Prime Minister has revealed certain things, and I saw it in the rally. I don't know if it was the first time he spoke about it, but it could have been. The language, or his use of language, was interesting. So one of the reports sums it up best. He's looking to implement a new elite squad, higher penalties for law enforcement infringements, and a simpler method to select the commissioner of police. Part of the new elite squad is, one, they would shore up legislation to protect undercover cops and to maybe allow them to do certain things without fear of prosecution. That's a big thing, because in the States, a police officer can't necessarily do certain things, but there are certain things that could come close to breaking the law that they could do. They have to be able to prove themselves. Obviously, they can't, kill anybody or do anything egregious, right? But they have to be able to prove themselves and not stand out as somebody who is obviously a cop. Now, one of the other things with this elite squad is it seems as though they're gonna operate in an insular manner. They're gonna be undercover. They're gonna then have the response units to go and arrest whoever, to interdict in whatever, to execute warrants for whatever. That's very interesting, right? And I think this comes back to, and so I'm gonna start here. The Prime Minister is basically implying a strategy without actually saying it formally or fully. The philosophy was, I guess, an easy example of that is the movie in '87, The Untouchables. Kevin Costner, Sean Connery. They want to go and deal with Al Capone, right? Elliot Ness. The movie, one of the first times he tries to do an alcohol raid, essentially somebody sold him out and all the alcohol was moved, so he looks like a fool. So he finds an old school cop who then basically shows him, look, we need to get a couple other guys who we know are not touched by corruption, and we four are going to be the four that's going to do something about it, right? And I think that's basically the idea. You get a squad. You do your best you can with regards to your selection process to get guys who are not touched by corruption. And then, yes, you go through the same process, constant testing, polygraphing, etc., etc. But since you're concentrating your efforts to make sure these guys are clean of corruption, then you let them not just do the investigation part, but also to save the warrants, do the arrest part, have them basically control the process up until they provide the evidence to the DPP, I would imagine. Then you potentially protect the investigation a lot better, because you don't want to, one of the tropes in Hollywood is, again, when you have some sort of police show, what police department has leaks and which agency doesn't want to work with whichever agency or police department because they want to keep things close to the vest. They don't want things to leak out and potentially either get to the criminals or, not necessarily patent for us, get to other law enforcement agencies and be used as political fodder. But if we could figure that last part. The thing is, and going back to one of the things that I said, it seems as though Stuart Young was kind of describing a situation like where you make a unit and you try to make the unit as independent and self-sufficient as possible. All the capabilities of policing as much as possible, obviously they can't do forensic testing, but all the capabilities of policing as much as possible will be organic to the unit, so they don't need to have cooperation with anybody else in the police service in order to deal with their specific targets. And one would assume these are for high-profile targets. It could be drug lords, it could be gangs, and not just street-level people in the gang, but gang leaders, etc., etc. Maybe, right? I'll believe the first one when I see it. The second one, that's low-hanging fruit. But the way how we communicated it, if he tried to speak that way to a room of technical professionals, he would basically reveal himself or out himself as an amateur. Now the question is he dumbing down the speech for the general public? Because that was one of the things that I found kind of concerning, and I've said this before about certain other aspects of public speaking, especially when ministers try to speak about highly technical things, and in this case, I also mean technology. they tend to sound like they're just kind of using a buzzword salad that they may not fully understand based on the context of how they use the words. It's fine, but it's not entirely, they're not speaking as though they're comfortable with the terminology. It's more robotic-like this is the specific way that I use this phrase. And I don't know exactly, I don't really understand it. I guess this is how you could tell a native speaker to a non-native speaker if you just remove things like accent, right? So, Mass Control, if you could just check a message there. The flip side to that is we have a different situation with the UNC. Now, I will say this. There are certain things I can't necessarily fault the Prime Minister saying, but UNC's candidate, Sean Sobers, he wants to say the PNM's plans are, how to say this, recycled or unrealistic. That's the headline. The crime plan already exists. Now, I understand apparently there are undercover officers. We don't really hear about them, but apparently they are there. And to be fair, you're not supposed to hear about undercover officers. The last thing an undercover officer wants is their face on a TV screen because then they can't do the job anymore. Undercover officers, however, do have a shelf life. You know, the more known they become as police officers, the less they could do. And TNT is a kind of small place. There's only so many places you could go. But to be fair to the Prime Minister, they might actually be looking at a new way of doing things, or maybe just a better way of doing something old. I'm not going to necessarily say that it's recycled, because the flip side is what Mr. Sobers is saying is not necessarily, and the UNC, is not necessarily groundbreaking either. Okay, there's going to be a new forensic science center. That is essentially, I mean, it's recycled. It's not necessarily recycled, but it is recycled. We're going to update a forensic science center. There's nothing new there, right? We're going to create a special offense for home invasions. And this is where I have an issue with both the PNM and the UNC's potential crime plan. Making a special offense for home invasions. And in parallel to that, Prime Minister Young is reported to have saying, higher penalties for law enforcement infringement, a general statement. Well, if the detection rate is so bad, the penalties don't matter. The penalties aren't the problem. Yeah, you could argue if we have the death penalty actually working, bringing back the death penalty is not the terminology that you should be using if you want to express an understanding of the situation. As much as it might be the obvious thing to say because the general public says it, when politicians say that, I know that they're speaking to people that don't understand the situation, but you're either one, contributing to the ignorance, or two, ignorant yourself. That said, for the most part, when men don't fear death because they think they're going to die before 25, more years in prison is not really going to be that effective, especially if 80% of them get out scot-free. So, there is that. And then ensuring the country's CCTV cameras are monitored and up and running. Members of the protective services are allowed to take home their firearms to defend themselves. That last part might be the only thing that I like, because everything else is the same old nonsense. And then this is one of the things that I'm having more and more issues with the UNC about. With the PNM, their communication faults are different. Right? They could contradict themselves in a more direct way, but in a case-by-case basis. But with the UNC, they have seemingly situations where they don't necessarily understand language. So you can't necessarily say that Stuart Young's crime plan already exists, and then your crime plan, at least some of the things that you mentioned are basically, well, let's take what exists and utilize that better and update it. Right? Yeah, let's just make sure the CCTV cameras are monitored. That's not a crime plan. That's just making sure that what's supposed to be done is done better. So this is what I don't understand. Dave Tanku said diversification and then proceeded to outline things under a headline of diversification that had nothing to do with diversification. And I'm supposed to be confident that he understands how to advise Kamala Prasad-Bissessar on economic matters. And now Sean Sowers basically is saying their crime plan is recycled. Now listen to our crime plan that includes a lot of, let's just kind of update what's there, not really innovate on anything. Let's not offer anything new, really. There's nothing new here. Oh, but it's more practical. But your complaint about the PNM's crime plan was that it was pre-existing. Well, so is most of your stuff. Stand Your Ground is not a crime plan, just by the way. The only thing that actually is pertinent from the UNC is when Roger Alexander said the TTPS is going to get more resources. Now, granted, we still have the question where it's going to come from, but let's just go with the assumption that they are willing to prioritize the TTPS. That could mean sacrificing spending in other areas. I might be okay with that, right? Depending on what you're spending it for. That, at least, that's something that we could chew on, that we could hang our hat on, that we could potentially look forward to and hopefully depend on. It's still devoid of a lot of detail, but it's something. It's a change in philosophy. But saying things like we'll make home invasions an offense, that's not that innovative. Saying things like we'll monitor CCTV cameras, that's not innovative. That's nothing new. A new forensic science center, that's nothing new. What about the actual strategies to get things done? More resources is the start, at least. But they've fallen short. Now, the other question with regards to this is with the SOE. Is it a failure? One of the things that I find interesting, the opposition, Dr. Monilal, I don't think I have his picture. He basically called the SOE a failure because there's 100 murders for the year. And technically speaking, it would have been better if he phrased that a lot better, if he didn't say it like that. Because the fact of the matter is, when we have close to 600 or over 600 murders a year, that means we have 100 murders in 2 months, give or take. In some months it might be 60, in other months it might be 30, 40, 50, right? When we've had 100 murders in 3.5 months, technically speaking, you can't then say that there is no success. There was no impact at all. The issue with the SOE is not that there's no impact. I'm pretty sure, if I didn't say it before, I apologize. I should have said it before, but I believe I said it before, that yes, you will suppress crime, and that will have an impact. The question is, will it have a long-term impact? Because then you're talking about when the SOE ends, because it can't stay on forever. How do you maintain that crime suppression so that crime will be reduced, particularly violent crimes, and in this case, the thing that everybody fears the most, the murder rate? Well, 100 murders in 3.5 months, that's actually not a bad outcome on that front. And to say there's no impact at all, I understand where the opposition is coming from with the SOE, because in the long run, yes, I would agree with them. The SOE is not going to be the be-all that end-all as a crime-fighting measure. But to say that it had no impact, again, it makes me wonder, are you kind of being lazy and taking shortcuts in your explanation to the public because you can't deal with complex discussions and dealing with complex situations? Are you dumbing it down for us because you think that's what the people want to hear or need to hear, or because you're incapable yourself of handling complex discussions? I mean, technically speaking, the government does it when they're ready. That's part of the reason governments around the world did it for COVID, and that's why COVID became so politicized and a ridiculous debate, if you ask me. Most people that are at the extreme ends of beliefs in COVID, I probably disagree with. And I would rather just not engage in that conversation anymore because it's fruitless. But if you want to be the next government, you have to prove that you're better than, not that you're just as bad or worse. And right now, in some levels, you might be a little bit better than in some cases, but more often than not, you're kind of bringing yourself back down to the pack, as opposed to surging ahead, as one would think the opposition party would be. I mean, the PNM did it after one term. You had 2 terms to get enough bullets in your gun, rhetorically speaking, to win this election campaign. It should not be this close because of the inherent advantage that you should have. You just need to not mess it up. And again, I can't help but think that in too many little ways, they are. And there's a part of me that feels that sad because we complain about a lack of meritocracy in our society. Technically speaking, a lack of actual competition in our politics. Regardless of who wins, if neither side was really trying their best, it means that what we're going to get is a government that is passable at best and incapable at worst. And we're just stuck picking between 2 bad options. And I'm not talking bad in terms of corruption. That's what usually people assume it to be. I'm talking bad in terms of literal proficiency at basic functions of their job. Communication, planning. All right. No more topics in the review. We'll get into them later on in the week. But we do have our media ambassador here with us. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome Inspector Calendar. Stay tuned. This is Talking About on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of this game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Pastor Jay, I want to get a tattoo.
You really want
to me. Respond to me how you would respond
Answer me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services, yeah.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
I'm back here on talking about the WSND content captain show, Michael Small, joined by Inspector, not acting, Kurt Callender, at least soon to be. Inspector, good morning.
Blessed morning to you.
I do believe a while ago we spoke it into existence from since then, and now it exists.
Yes, you are quite prophetic, might I dare say, as it relates to that I am no longer, well, it's not official, the ceremony hasn't happened as yet, but very soon I would no longer be in Hollywood.
Okay.
As it relates to the rank of inspector, because the promotion should be taking place later today. And I'm actually now looking at the DO as it relates to the merit list. So yes, you are correct. As of today, I would no longer be acting. I would be confirmed in the rank as inspector.
Well, I think, I'll be honest, I would say it's a long time coming, right? And much deserved with regards to how you're able to handle yourself as a media ambassador, but also, like, you could tell when someone has field experience or not, because the ability to speak to certain things in certain ways, and, you know, and this is the type of police officer we want to see promoted. Police officers that do things, not police officers that only talk. Or even worse, can't talk. Anyway, I won't say anything more about that. Now, with that said, we have some stuff to get through here because, of course, we're in a very interesting situation in the sense that within the 2 weeks to a general election, we're also in 2 weeks of a vacation period.
Yes.
And that vacation period notoriously also comes with it certain things. I know I think maybe the last year or two, licensed officers tend to go to Tobago and deal with potential, you know, traffic violations. Of course, the obvious ones would be not having your license expired, but also potentially maybe people, you know, they're in Tobago, there's celebratory atmosphere, thinking, it's just Tobago on vacation, I can have a drink, and then not necessarily planning out, I could have a drink, but who's going to drive? And people might or might not get in trouble. And that's not limited to Tobago, though. That potentially would be something that you would have concerns about for any celebration throughout the year, throughout the country.
Well, absolutely. Road safety for us is something that we take very seriously, because the most common mode of transportation is a vehicle or a motor vehicle to transport persons or to cause persons to go from point A to point B. And the law-abiding citizens and the lawless also traverse the very same route. There are no two, it is not a separate road for the law-abiding citizens.
Yeah.
and a separate road for the criminal elements. So more often than not, to be able to go from one place to another, the average person in Trinidad and Tobago use the roadways. And it is our responsibility to ensure that, apart from the fact that vehicles are roadworthy, persons are in compliance with the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, and also that persons do not take the opportunity to transport illegal stuff, firearms, ammunition, narcotics, and also predial larceny or predial produce that they did not plant and also did not purchase, but they are in possession of. And we also, and you would have mentioned it, now that school is out, as a matter of fact, we in this country, it's almost as if we have a drinking culture. We celebrate, we take a drink for everything, and it is our responsibility to ensure that persons are not driving under the influence of alcohol or driving within the legal limit. So you can rest assured that there will be a number of road traffic exercises, a number of DUI exercises. The DUI task force will be out in full force during the Easter vacation because persons go to the beaches, rivers, the waterfalls, and stuff like that. And they usually go there to relax, have a good time, but engage in other things that could get them in trouble. Alcohol, narcotics, that kind of stuff.
Now, one of the things, I never necessarily thought about this before. If I did, I forgot. But whenever school is out, I enjoy the roads being freer.
You are absolutely
right.
correct.
Everybody, all of the morning commuters enjoy the road being freer.
It was quite clear coming into Port of Spain this morning.
Now, but here's the trick that I now started to think of. A more open road is a greater opportunity to speed. So is there potentially any correlation with regards to, and now when we go on vacation, some drivers are like, let me go, open range, let's just go.
Hence the reason I would have mentioned earlier, the Traffic and Highway Patrol Branch, they would be stepping up their exercises as well as their road safety campaign, because most times persons see officers on the road, they tell themselves they are coming to harass law-abiding citizens. Why all you do go and look for things to do. But the truth be told, we are also there to promote road safety awareness, proper use of the nation's road, ensuring that your vehicle is roadworthy, and give you some tips in order for you to treat with that. Right, so you can rest assured that we are fully aware of that when school is closed or when school is out, persons, because of the fact that the road is a lot clearer, persons may want to take that opportunity to just go a little above the 100 and so on.
It's like you're already getting there faster. Why you have to push it and now go too far?
And as I always say, if you are heading home, what is the hurry? I mean, you can be late to go home, especially if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. The road is already clear, as you quite rightly mentioned. But even at this time of the year when school is out, you have very little traffic on the road. So you can go under 100 and still reach on time. So we are there to ensure that persons are in compliance with the rules of the road.
Yeah, the few times I've driven to San Fernando, I don't go above 100.
Right.
If it wasn't for traffic, it wouldn't be that long of a drive, right? Traffic with the road works is what really makes it, a pain, right? Because then I'm kind of stuck, right? But with that said now, a lot of people say, oh, you come here to harass law-abiding citizens. I think what people don't understand is when you see a car doing something to cause you to want to stop it, more often than not, it's not like you all have like, the USS Enterprise scanning the car so you can tell how many life forms in the car, what the age is in the car, what material is in the car, what have you. You all see a car. Maybe you could make out, if it's a family or not, maybe, right? But what if it's older children? Then all you know is it's like 3-4 adults in the car, and the car might be going too fast, or the car might be doing whatever, right? So you stop the car, you don't know what's going on. You can't take it for granted that you know and you let it pass, because the flip side is, you said something earlier, there's also the fact that you all want to catch people that might want to transport drugs or guns, right? And this is one of the things that I'm wondering, oh, it's holiday time, they're not going to stop people during holidays, so let's run it now. Let's move the guns now, because the police are going to give everybody an ease up, right? Because if they stop people, the people are going to complain, and they don't want the complaints. But this is one of those things where at some point, well, if the criminals figure that out, you all have to then respond appropriately to prevent that. And the public can't take it for granted. Why are you interfering with me for? Well, I only know it's you when I reach the window. But I had a reason to investigate you.
And in addition to that, many people, for whatever reason, would have discovered when the police stops them, or after the police stopped them, their driver's permit was expired about a month ago. Their insurance was expired about a week ago. And because of the fact that a driver's permit expires every 5 years, and in some instances every 10 years,
well, it used to be,
it is not something you check every day.
It used to be shorter, I think.
About 3 years.
But it still caught people.
Right. So it's now 5 years or 10 years. But you are going about your merry way, driving from point A to point B, but you are not checking these things, because it is not something that has to be renewed annually. Only to discover that your permit was expired about 3 months ago. A lady was stopped in a roadblock, and she had racked up so many demerit points, right? And had we not, well, had I, because I was the person that stopped her, had I not stopped her and insisted, because she indicated she has several vehicles and she probably left the driver's permit in another vehicle, and now Trinidadians are real praise, real praise. And based on my insistence, of course, I had the licensing authority that they ran her information, and she has several unpaid tickets that racked up several demerit points, and she was actually supposed to turn in her driver's permits.
And this is why you can't take it for granted. Just if you are John Public saying, why harassing law-abiding citizens for? This is why the police can't take it for granted.
Driving a very a nice vehicle, an SUV. It wasn't a rundown vehicle, but I just want to remind the public of something though. An expired driver's permit automatically means you have no insurance. It makes the insurance null and void, because one of the conditions for having an insurance to drive a vehicle on the road is a valid driver's permit. So once the driver's permit is expired, the insurance becomes null and void.
One of the things that I can't get over is the fact that people compound the wrongdoing, right? So there was a time we got into a fender bender of an accident on Arapita Avenue long before it was the avenue, right? At a traffic light. It was raining. We didn't stop in time, like we skid. And the oncoming car, didn't necessarily see us. They may have cut the tin a little bit. And, little fender bender we hit as we intersected. The key point was the driver wanted to start to complain about injuries that, we didn't hit that hard. It was not that big of a deal. And we eventually found out, his license was expired. And now his case, it might have been so bad, I don't necessarily think that he was breaking law. But there have been times, I'm sure, and I've seen stories abroad and whatnot, where, you already may be drinking. You already have, or you have your license expired or whatever. Like, why are you now going to speed? Maybe run a red light. Thinking your license is expired. You're just asking for the police to say, we're not going to give you a warning this time. It's like, look, why go through all of that? I mean, I understand, yes, you might not know your license expired, but there's no reason why you shouldn't speed. And call attention to yourself. That's one of the things about speeding. It calls attention to you.
So that is a whole recipe for disaster. And I want to remind the public as well. Driving under the influence of alcohol, right, above the prescribed limit, is the police, it is an arrestable offense, one, and it is also a conviction. So if you are found guilty in the court, that is a conviction against your name.
Right, that will be permanent.
Well,
you could, it's not as bad, but yeah.
So it's not a case where you are going to get a ticket.
And you just pay it on.
And we allow you to go. We cannot allow the offense to continue. So because you can kill your people, including yourself. So it is the police have a power of arrest there to arrest you for driving under the influence of alcohol. And if you are found guilty in the court, it is a conviction against your name.
And although I'll say this, why does it seem as though more often than not, the driver, at least half the time, gets out unscathed, and it's the other people? And this is, I guess, one of those things where...
That has happened on so many occasions. The driver walks away without a scratch, he kills somebody, and a number of fatalities, and you live to tell the story after that.
I mean,
quite unfortunate.
Just a slight segue. Is it that we kind of take it for granted? I think people don't understand. It's one thing if you think you have confidence that you can handle the car at 140 kilometers an hour.
Right.
But you're assuming that no one is going to give you a bad drive while you're doing 140 kilometers an hour. And I, as one of the people behind the scenes likes to point out in the morning, my 10-minute commute, you know, more often than not, I'll get a bad drive once a week. If I was speeding, you know, I'll be up a creek without a paddle at that point. And
let us get a bad drive every day.
Right.
Many
exactly.
bad drive. Yeah.
So then now, and we're saying, oh, you think the road is clear? Well, the other party might also be, hey, let me drive fast, the road is clear, and I'm not accustomed to having to anticipate traffic and maneuver around traffic at these speeds, because usually we're all at a crawl. But now when we basically racing, and we're not accustomed to it now, somebody can get in trouble, on top of other things.
But in addition to everything that you just said, right, many a times, the persons who were speeding or driving recklessly or driving under the influence of alcohol or a combination of all, when, God forbid, many times, God forbid, they take a life, the vehicle has to be inspected by a motor vehicle inspector, and you are seeing that there are a number of issues with the vehicle. The vehicle is not roadworthy, the brakes, the tires.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Why do you compound these
so
things?
you are not checking to ensure that your vehicle is roadworthy, but you are speeding on top of that under the influence of alcohol. So it's a whole recipe for disaster.
And again, these are things that the police can't take for granted. Like, I'm sorry. Right? You want to know one of my keys to not being pulled over? Not break the speed limit. It works. It magically works. Somehow, don't break red lights. You know, don't drink. Don't break the speed limit.
Don't break the speed
limit. Right? But one of the things that I want to ask, we have basically two situations kind of on top of each other. We have the election going on as well. Funny enough, on more than one occasion, I forgot about Easter and the vacation and the holidays because of the election. So, you know, I'm talking to some people, you know, high-level people, and we're like, okay, let's do this thing on Friday. And it's like, eventually, somebody down the line had to kind of remind us, oh, wait, hold on, Friday's a holiday. Are we doing this on Friday? Are you sure we're doing this on Friday? Or should we do it maybe on a different day? Because the problem with Friday is most people, they're going to be watching TV at home on a Friday. They'll be probably doing something on a Friday. On a public holiday, right? So do you want to put it on? And then we have to rethink because we forgot. We didn't even consider it. So now that we have this election, of course, the public, some will be like, it don't matter, go about their day, business as usual.
Yes.
But others, the people who are involved in it, is there a tendency, I think, for people to maybe get distracted? And in a similar vein, like, well, it's the holidays and it's time to relax and we can have a little drink and then we drive down the road to go wherever. It's a similar kind of phenomenon where, well, it's election, you know, so things hard and you might be stressed or you might be celebratory. You have a little drink and you're not really thinking road traffic laws because you're being distracted by this election. And now I guess we're in a situation where you could be doubly distracted.
Yes.
And the police are basically saying, you may be allowed abiding citizen other days of the year. But right now, you might have a lapse in judgment, and we need to interdict that.
And that is what we are there for, to remind you that drunk or business, you have to mind your sober. You understand? So we are there to ensure that persons comply with the rules of the road. And we also have to remind persons that now that school is closed, you are going to have, you may have several, more children using the road, the parks.
And all throughout the day.
Yes. So you have to be mindful of the fact that look out for children still by the playground, the play parks, and that kind of stuff. Always be mindful of that.
Also, I guess on the beaches as well.
Yes, well, I wanted to come to that as it relates to now that school is out. What do we do with the children? We cannot have them home for 2 weeks entirely.
And
so
I just want to point out, yes, the media ambassadors may have talked about this on other holidays before.
Yes.
But just like Facebook Marketplace, you know, some people either don't hear or don't listen. So we're going to listen to it again. Continue, please. Thank you.
So persons may want to take their families to the beach. That is a wonderful place to take the family. But children may not always know their danger. So that is why you have, as the adult, have to be responsible. So we are asking you to reduce the risk when you're taking your children to the beach. Check the weather forecast and the tides before you leave home. Choose a lifeguard beach and swim between the red and yellow flags. Check the safety signs and flags around the beach. Be aware of any dangers and know where to enter and exit the water. Oftentimes we are seeing persons are giving the lifeguard attitude.
Like the police.
Yes. Yeah. Because they want to bathe here. And the lifeguard said, well, no, you cannot bathe here because it have a strong, because you cannot see these things. And if you don't have a trained eye, you cannot see things like rip current and all these kind of things.
Yes.
But as far as you are concerned, these are nice spots because it have some coconut trees right here. I could relax under the coconut tree because it keeps it shady and nice, and my children could be there, but no, it have a rip current there. So listen to the lifeguard, right? It might save your life. He is doing his job.
I mean, so I am someone who, I've never been affected by rip currents to the point where I panic and I can't get out of it.
Right.
But to say that I, you know, for all the years that I've gone in the sea and I'm very comfortable in the water, I have no idea really what to look for. And I've seen the videos and pictures, this is what you look for. And when I go to Maracas, yeah, I see sideways water, but I really don't see it.
You have a clue.
You know, it doesn't register.
And most people may want to run out of the water, but you may have to run
parallel to the shore. Yeah, it all depends on, to some extent, your ability as a swimmer. And I've reached the point where most people are not as comfortable in the water as I am, so they should be a bit more careful.
Most people believe they are swimmers, but what they really could do is paddle water. They may not be swimmers at all.
Yeah.
So when you get into a rip current and you're not sure what to do, or you panic.
And then they want to say, why didn't the lifeguard save them? So I guess this is an example, and it's the same thing for the police where people need to kind of take the advice. Because just like, you know, there can't be one lifeguard, you know, focusing on every individual on the beach, just like how there can't be one police officer, two police officers, because you don't really want police officers to be by themselves, at least in modern times, on every street corner to interdict everything. Okay, we have Digger Martin in line. I did have a point to make, or a point to bring up for the discussion, but we'll take the caller from Digger Martin first. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Good morning, Sean, and to the senior officer of the TTPS. Two issues that I want to address this morning: police and what I'm seeing on the political hustings, and I will do that first. I have seen that the opposition party, the UNC, has released several manifestos, they are calling it. And to me, that tells me they have a plan, because they have gone into granular details of what they want to do. And I've looked, because I'm really into education, to see where we're going. And I've looked at the manifesto for education. And I realized there are two issues that they will continue what they started in 2010-15, they will continue. Because I am in the midst of all of that. I have the experience and I understood. They're going to restart the laptop process, which I believe is a tremendous value for this country. And they're going to basically bring back the CAC component at the SCA. And I was a stakeholder in that. I was an integral part, both as a parent, as a PTA member, as a school board chairman, and a general person within the system. That system was so good. I think one of the previous think is the final of the president, removed it. And that to me was the most wicked thing that they have done. That system did two things. If parents really wanted to help their children, to bond with their children, they would have understood what that is. That was a seamless transition, allow a seamless transition into secondary school. And that to me. And then the laptop issue is a fundamental thing with respect to digitization. I have experienced last week taking somebody to NCRHA, which I believe the failure of the national press to identify chaos. Last week it was chaos into the Eric William Mount Hope complex because they digitizing. And two things I picked up: the competency of the clerks or the competency of the management, the senior executives of the NCRHA to manage that change, because they're probably struggling to understand it themselves. So that is why I'm saying these granular details tell me somebody's thinking about it. And I'm coming to the TTPS officer now. Sir, I am disappointed with the results of the SOE. I think the TTPS has failed remarkably. They're saying they are success, but I don't know how they're managing the success. Every week there was a press come and you itemize on a spreadsheet all what you have done, and you compared it with nothing. You didn't have any targets that you would have told us you benchmarking that with. And why I'm saying I believe you all have failed, because you, based on what the utterances of the then Prime Minister said, gave intelligence information to call the SOE. So if it's the TTPS gave him that advice, the TTS should have had in their mind specific things that they should have thrown out to us, and then we compared it with all that statistics. For example, you said you basically collected 200 and something guns. Fair enough, that is 200 guns less. But your intelligence said you had 12,000 guns circulating in the domain of the public. If you say the SOE was to mitigate murders and homicide and gang activity, then you have failed. That's simple thing. You have arrested and incarcerated 50, and you only charging 11 now. And you say down the road, during a previous host on another show, in one cache, he would have had a significant amount of guns somewhere in Santa Cruz. Has the police identified where that guns come? Who put the guns there? Those are the things I'm expecting, because if you say, yes, you had some success, sure, you might have some success for let murders, but that you are doing that in a closed environment at SOE. Now the gate is open again. Let's see if it was skewed up. This is the same narrative the police did about 3 months, 5 or 6 months ago, when your current Benjamin said, you see a 44 decrease, and then the next month they shut up to about 20 more than the average. So are gone, and have a nice day.
All right, caller. I don't know if you wanted to go first. Or...
No, you can go first.
Well, the thing is, look, it's a pertinent question. With regards to the effectiveness of the SOE, part of the things that we have to consider is, one, gun violence changed. Now everything was a handgun, as opposed to automatic rifles spraying into crowds. So we could be thankful for that. Two, and I mentioned it earlier, the UNC should have framed it better. 100 murders in 3.5 months, technically murders have been suppressed, right? Now, here's the key. We have to ask ourselves, where did all of the higher powered weapons go, right? The SOE actually might have been successful in suppressing crime. The criminals basically said, all right, we know there's an SOE, let's take countermeasures, put things away, hide things, and we'll just wait it out. And arguably, and this was criticisms leveled at the situation from the beginning, how it was implemented, where it was kind of announced in a way where we didn't necessarily know if the police had everything in place to kind of take advantage of it and get that initial first jump off. You know, we know it's coming, they don't know it's coming, so we could get an advantage in the first few days that the criminal element wouldn't have, right? We don't know. The perception was that element of surprise was potentially lost, at least strategically overall. Maybe tactically in certain situations, you know, it was still viable, right? And that could have potentially impacted the overall effectiveness of the SOE as a tool more than we know. Now, yes, the arrest rates is to some extent disappointed, but the flip side is if the criminals kind of figure out we just need to hold strain for 3 months, hey, and it's during Carnival, so most of us want to just fet on lime anyway, right? That could be why. That could be why.
But it's quite interesting. He said that the police failed, the TTPS failed. And he sort of trivialized the less murders to some extent. We are speaking about close to 50 murders less.
Yeah, that's about that, yes.
Compared to the same period last year. Now, one murder is one too many. We understand that, and we are not trivializing anybody's life here. But we are speaking about almost 50 persons less that were murdered.
And the SOE ended up days ago, right?
I think it was Sunday.
So, okay.
Yesterday. And one firearm taken off the street. Do you know how many lives could be taken with one firearm? And he said 250 firearms. You know how many lives were saved? How many murders would have been prevented by taking those 250 plus firearms off the street, along with the thousands of assorted ammunition? Many persons, through the detention order, who are allegedly involved in gangs and gang-related activities, being incarcerated for 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, as the case may be. That disruption of the gangs and the criminal element, that is a win for the TTPS.
I think we need to understand some of it is going to be deficiencies of the SOE as it exists conceptually, and then to what extent is the SOE all on the TTPS?
And I just want to say one more thing. The information gathered during the SOE through evidence-based policing and intelligence-led policing, we now would be taking that information, of course it will be stored in a database and so on, and continuing to target the criminal elements based on that information that was gathered. So it's not that the SOE is finished and the police services close up shop. We would still be targeting the criminal elements.
Although I feel that there's certain legislative deficiencies that's going to make that an uphill battle, but that's a whole other conversation. We have a caller waiting on the line. Good morning, caller. You on here? Caller, good morning.
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 I find you all not discussing the elephant in the room, where the road is concerned, which is the state of the road.
That's a good point.
We're not discussing the state of the roads at all. And personally, I believe after the cost of maintaining a vehicle, and then you look at the state of the roads, you got to be mad to be driving hard on the road. That is one. So when the police pull over people and they charge them, because for me, driving is a necessity, but at the same time, you have to maintain it at a certain standard. Concerning the SOE, you have about 6,000 police officers to service 1.5 million people, which is about 1 to every 250. Now, I understand the state of emergency wasn't really for crime, it was really to get the police up and off. Because they was moving it was moving too late. All the rates were bad. And for me, it was a success. Because, as you were saying earlier, 600 murders a year, 12 months, that is 50 murders a month. Right?
Yeah.
And if we have 100 in 3 months, that is like 33 in a month. So it went down. It can't come down to zero. And plenty of our citizens, we like to criticize, but we don't look at incremental gain. We want the whole thing one time. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. I mean, look, if people want to say the SOE failed conceptually because the long term well, the reduction and the suppression can't be maintained at the same level, after it, at least not without long-term investigation. So it's kind of one of those things where maybe the midterm, obviously, there's going to potentially be a rise, but in the long term, depending. But the point is, you don't have the same tools. Because the SOE is suspended or ended, right?
I just want to touch on something you mentioned earlier as it relates to the law and so on, the laws. One of the main reasons for one of the advantages of the SOE was, before the SOE, the police service was getting some challenges to get warrants to target certain criminal elements. The SOE had since eliminated that. So you no longer needed a warrant to search people's homes and business places and stuff like that. That was one of the main win, if you want to call it that, one of the positives of the SOE. Right, so we had to be mindful of that. There were a lot of challenges to get warrants before. I don't want to get into all the challenges and so on.
It's one of those things where, yes, we don't necessarily want a situation like this in the long run, right? Because the suspension of rights, that might be a bit too
but the point I'm making
but
is
for
this.
3 months,
but the point I'm making, I just want, and I am in agreement with the caller. It was a win because we didn't have to go through all the red tape to get the warrants and so on. So you continue to target the criminal element, being relentless to, and it's not just, well, okay, I go in and search John House 10 times a month. No, we're doing that based on evidence, based on intelligence gathering.
So basically, what the SOE did was showed us if we had, and this is my words, not the inspectors, if the laws were better or more efficiently written, more practically written, potentially we could see not necessarily the exact same level of operations, but similar without necessarily infringing on the rights of the average citizen, right? Just want to put that out there. We have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on the air.
Good morning, John.
Morning.
Morning.
Inspector.
Inspector Calendar.
Yeah.
Normally we say ASP, so just now I'm expecting you to move up in your ranks again.
That's a whole lot.
I mean, speak it into being, man. I mean, from your lips to God's ears.
Right.
I mean, technically, we only have a 33% success rate with that one. So, and you are the success rate. So we might have used up all of God's grace or luck or karma already. Hopefully not.
Right.
Hopefully
now,
not.
Sean, I have to agree with the last caller about the yesterday. I think in the midst of when it was called carnival season, what I have seen in terms of the amount of arrests, the disruption in crime activity, and the disruption is what was important. I hope whoever comes into government after this election looks at the results, looks at the information, and try to move a new legislative agenda to help assist in a little more in crime fighting in this country. Now, that being said, let me say this. I want to talk about. I saw a video of Mr. Fisherman and Friends of the Sea, Gary Aboud, put out last week, and while I listened to it, and he talked about the criticism of the 1% by Mr. Alexander and Philip Alexander and the UNC. And Mrs. Basad Bisessa. And he talked about the hard work these people do for their businesses, himself included, and he called a couple businesses, Super Farm, called out Extra Foods, called out Basad, and Pennywise. And those people have built big businesses in this country, and I think they have worked hard. However, when I look around the country, there are a lot of new businesses going up in the country, Sean. A lot of them. Grocery pump supermarkets, eating places. All of them are what I call consumption businesses. And I say consumption businesses in the sense that even though people are trying to build businesses, they all rely on the foreign exchange that the government owns. None of them produce foreign exchange, none, or net foreign exchange owners, I would say. And this is where the problem is in this country, because I hear the UNC talking about revamping the regime, of the foreign exchange regime. And what nobody is understanding, or none of them speaking about in this country during this election campaign, is that, as far as I'm concerned, Sean, the country, if we have to transform, we have to look at businesses that are going to, industries I should say, that are going to earn foreign exchange and complement the energy sector as owners. And if that does not happen in this country, they could open 10,000 more businesses in this country. Once they are consumption businesses, it is not going to help. And all they're going to hear is that they're going to be crying and asking for more foreign exchange and more foreign exchange, which they are doing presently. And we are not earning as much because the businesses that are coming up are not innovative enough to try and understand we have to earn foreign exchange. So the pie is going to get smaller for all of them. Because if you have one pizza and normally it used to be cut in 16 and now you have to cut it in 45, the portion is going to get smaller. And that is what none of them trying to understand in this country. And all those business owners, I have to say shame on them for not wanting to contribute to this country in a different way. Start to look at how you can open a business that can earn something, because the only person has been doing this is the state. For the most part, they have one or two businesses. Out of all those businesses Mr. Aboud called out, none of them took risks like Mr. Dupree. With all the millions and billions some of them have, and they earn in this country, none of them took initiatives like Mr. Dupree to set up and earn foreign exchange. None of them looked at the business model of Ansar Makar, what Mr. Sabga did, and when he went out there and encouraged some of those businesses that go out there to come into their business and put in their business and take shares, and a lot of those businesses became export businesses. Kennel Scott, I can call a whole number of them in this country. Until trying to be going to understand that, we're going nowhere fast. Have a good day, Sean.
Thank you, Carl. I'll say this. When we say the 1%, the reality of that phrase, the 1%, I don't know if you know this, Inspector, there are a lot of people that qualify for the 1% that you don't actually mean is the 1%. Because we don't understand the wealth distribution in the country. 1% is 1/100th. There are 1.5 million people. 1% of that is still tens of thousands of people. Easy, right? And when you get down to who are the upper 100,000 or upper 10,000 or upper 15,000, right? Well, at some point you run into names that you're not thinking is the 1%. They're not all Bill Gates in America. In America, the 1% will include people who are just, relatively well off, but they're not billionaires. And to some extent, that could be true in TNT. When we say the 1%, it's about, and it's not even about who's the richest. It's about the people who maybe go from being rich to being rich and using that to take advantage of the rest of society in less than legal ways. I think that's the implication, although I know that's technically not part of the definition. And certain businesses that might be part of the 1%, we're not really worried about them. We're worried about other things going on, connections to certain other things transnationally, not export businesses. But I'll say this, at least right now, cursory glance at the landscape, the TTMA might be, or might end up being, one of the most important business chambers or organizations that we have in this country, because they are basically addressing that manufacturing. But manufacturing for export in particular, right? So, because the new president, that's part of his agenda. I like what he had to say. So hopefully it works out. It might not, who knows? I know with the Hotel Association for Tobago Hotel and Tourism especially, to some extent it seems that they could only go so far and they can't get any further. Hopefully at some point things will improve, But it just goes to show you that these private associations or organizations kind of have to do it because to depend on a legislative agenda or a cabinet agenda, you know, I don't know how many times we want to kind of set ourselves up for disappointment. But with regards to the SOE, I'll just say this. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a total success or total failure. But the one thing I can't deny, high-powered rifles have disappeared from the landscape in the last 3 months. I don't necessarily know the reason why. And there's a part of me, yes, I expect them to come back sooner or later. But I'm grateful that they were not around in the last 3 months. All right? I mean, just a reprieve from some of the ridiculousness of the violence is appreciated. I don't know if you have anything.
Yep, you're absolutely correct, because one high-powered rifle, I mean, they have the capacity to discharge over 3,000 rounds a minute.
Yeah.
So
larger magazines.
Yeah, you are speaking
more
about
penetration.
the AR-15s and the AK-47, the Khalil. I mean, those are, you don't want to be on the...
When the Deputy Commissioner of Prison was, and that might have been the last, that same day might have been the last big gun hole as well. When he was attacked, it was with a pistol. And there was a part of me, and I think I said it last week, I was grateful it was with a pistol, because his daughter was in the car, and they shot at the car too. And he himself was just standing up there in the pathway to his car, exposed. And people don't seem to understand, pistols are not as accurate as rifles. They're not as easy to use. They're just lighter, right? But that also comes with you don't have a stock. You know, it's harder to stabilize because it's smaller. And the round is not as accurate.
But in addition to that, though, many of the criminal elements, they are not properly well trained.
Yeah. Also,
to
they'll just
use high-powered rifles.
Yeah.
So you would see...
Oh gosh, thankfully.
A lot of what you call collateral damage.
Yeah.
But well, they don't really care. I mean, if they come for you, by all means necessary, their intention is to kill you. They are not concerned about their backdrop selection. They are not concerned about the collateral damage.
Yeah.
So hence the reason...
That backdrop selection thing is a big thing.
Yeah, hence the reason it is very important for persons to understand you are not doing yourself and your family and the law-abiding citizens any favors by knowing who are in possession of these high-powered rifles, and you remain silent, because that is your RRB or your RRG, your real boy or your real girl. But the illegal firearm you ignore today may very well be responsible for taking your life or your family life tomorrow, or even raping and robbing somebody connected to you.
Because it's not just you might end up in a bad situation because of it, with regards to violence, so it might be used against you directly. There's also the fact that, okay, another criminal element here about the gun, they come after the gun, right? But then also, I mean, are you going to try and tell the police why you're harassing good citizens when you have any illegal firearm in your house?
No, not only that, you know. The criminal elements, they rent these stuff, you know. So you and John good, but you have family in South that John didn't know about, and John rented his high-powered rifle to his criminal associates in South. Are they going to be so lenient on your family in South?
There we go. There we go. But not just that. So at some point, the knowledge of this gun, if you're renting it out, will pass around. And then somebody might decide, let's trace it back and see where it goes. I think we kind of underestimate that. That's also one of the reasons why arming the citizenry could potentially, this is where legal firearms could eventually be used in crimes, not in the hands of the license holders, but because they get stolen one way or the other.
Yeah, or once the persons are properly trained, because I mean, you may have a number of persons who are in possession of legal firearms, and the level of training,
well, because I mean, with various media masters, we've spoken about it, and I think you and I spoke about it as well. And you have guns, and then when you take it, well, for carnival, the concern is don't take it on your road.
Right.
Guns and alcohol don't mix.
No.
It could get lost. It could fall out the fanny pack during Juve celebrations, and then you don't know where it's gone, and the police have had to deal with that. Well, I mean, now add a criminal element that knows you have a gun, knows that they have to ambush you, and they will. You don't know when they come in, they know when they come in. It's the same element of surprise, right, in reverse that I spoke about the SOE. And now all of a sudden, they're not just targeting you for what money you might have because they think you have money because your house looks nice, but also because they know you have a gun and they want another gun.
That's right.
Now, one of the things, going back to the second call, I think, and he made a good point, with regards, because we spoke about speeding, and we spoke about people need to understand that it's not necessary, and you could get in trouble. And one of the things that I find hilariously true with what he said was the fact that speeding also means that when you run into a patch of bad road, you don't have time to stop.
To slow down.
Right? And depending on what it is, because there's talk about the highway expansion in Shogunas might have some issues with the road work on the inside lane, the fast lane, where cars, well, they want to go even faster than the speed limit, right? Cool. You get in trouble, you end up in an accident, you can't respond. And then I guess what makes it worse is we have to understand on highway speeding, if you cause an accident, the accident might not be limited to you. If you're lucky, it'll be limited to you, right? It's similar to drunk driving, right? But in the highway, it's everybody in your lane is going one direction unless you jump the barrier or cross. You're not going to hit oncoming traffic, right? So drunk drivers might not cause too much damage at times on the highway. It might not be as easy as, say, other parts of the country. But then again, you hit one car, that car hit the next car, all of a sudden half the highway is blocked now, and if other people are speeding, it's just one of those things where it could grow exponentially. One thing could have a chain reaction lead to the next.
Correct. And I just want to mention, as I mentioned, driving under the influence of alcohol. Driving while sleep deprived is just as bad, or depraved. As a matter of fact, it may even be worse. Because you may tell yourself that I might be able to reach home in time. But when the brain shuts down, I mean, I am absolutely certain two of the things that nobody has ever fought on, one is sleep and a diarrhea. But let us deal with the sleeping part. I mean, you could fight a lion and two tigers, you sleep.
Listen, usually it's father time always wins when it comes to athletes. But I have never heard, sleep always wins, but more importantly, diarrhea.
Yes.
It's true. Diarrhea will always win.
Make sure you are well rested. One of the things I used to do quite a lot is when I was working in Port of Spain, and I realized, look, I know I'm not going to be able to reach home on time. I used to pull in Twin City Mall and take a little 5 in the car, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Please, it is just as dangerous as pulling on the side of the road to sleep. So we are not recommending that either. But in well-lit areas, the malls,
or stay in your office, depending.
So stay in,
right? Managers need to understand if your guy stays in the office because they might be tired, they're not there for you to tell them extra things to do.
Right. But I know we might be running out of time. I just want to go back to the children part.
Right. Yes.
So we are reminding persons, the Children Act, well, this is me personally, is one of the scariest legislation that I have ever read, or that is actually in force in Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
Once you have care, charge, control, and custody of a child, you need to read the Children's Act. So if you knowingly put the child in harm's way, and it speaks about abandonment, neglect, and all these kinds of things, you can be found liable. Leave your children with an responsible adult. The responsible adult is not granny who is 75 years old on medication that may have all her faculty. No disrespect.
These days,
we have some young grannies.
It's not that bad.
True.
No, when you and I was growing up, that was a different story. But now, now it's like 90-something, 80-something granny, then you have to...
but not only that, we have some very young granny these days.
Yes.
Very young granny.
Although, we shouldn't take it for granted just because they're young in their everyday life that they could keep up with a toddler.
Well, that too. So leave your children with a responsible adult.
Well, adults are also not teenagers.
Right, and not a person who does, smoke marijuana, and drinking, taking a drink for everything, and you leave that person to watch your child. Right? Camps.
You might think it's obvious, but it happens too often.
Too often. Camps. So parents have to work. Both parents have to work. So they sign up, they enroll their children in these camps. Beautiful, wonderful. Do your research with these camps. What experience do they have with children of the scam? Check with the police to make sure that they don't have any criminal record, especially in relation to children, child molesters and so on, and pedophiles, that kind of thing that way. Right? So do your due diligence, parents, before you choose to spend your hard-earned money to register your child in these Easter camps, and check in with your children once in a while.
Yeah.
Find out how they are doing. You go personally and interact with the tutors. Make sure the child is comfortable, and who you're leaving your children with, they do not have any ill intentions. Right, for persons who want to go hiking, wonderful activities, don't bite off more than they could chew. If you know that you're not fit, you have to know your limits. I would give you an example, right? We have a group in our church called Fit to Finish. It is a nice, wonderful way to interact and spend time outdoors and so on. So they decided to go to the Bamboo Cathedral. I decided to accompany them. There and then it is where my body reminded me of how old I was. You understand?
But also maybe unaccustomed to certain physical activities sometimes.
Well, that too. I mean, I was doing a little thing at home and so on, but the body,
hiking is different to exercise at home.
Completely different. So people check out the trail before, ensure that you are accompanied, well, camping groups, hiking groups, camping groups, and so on. And we also want to remind people, look out for nature, snakes, that kind of stuff. Right? And carry the proper footwear, the proper clothing, the proper, make sure you are well hydrated and so on, because it's very hot outside. And we also want to remind persons as well, persons who love the water, life jackets, that kind of stuff. Well, there's a very good friend of mine, I won't call his name. He actually bathed with a life jacket in a swimming pool. Whereas that it is better to be safe than sorry. Mm-hmm. Please let persons know where you are going, especially with hiking and camping, because hiking, the weather conditions could change drastically. And persons panic very quickly if they are unfamiliar with the terrain. They are not sure what to do, and they end up getting trapped and lost. Yeah. So we want to remind persons who intend to do hiking and so on, or any outdoor activity, camping and hiking, to drop by the nearest police station, give the police a list of the persons, their contact numbers. So when you come back, you let the police know, yes, we came back safely, all the persons are accounted for and stuff like that, because you mightn't get cell service when it's raining, depending on where you're going and all that kind of stuff. Right, so we want persons, children, adults, everybody to be safe during the Easter vacation and after the Easter vacation, or on the roads and off the roads, even at home.
So I'll just have a couple quick hits to add. The thing that I want to bring up, child safety, don't take it for granted. This is with regards to pools. You're going to a guest house, you're going to a rental, you're going to a hotel. It happened in Tobago once. I actually used as an example. I ended up using the example to the family of the deceased to who it happened to. And I think to some extent they understood where I was coming from and why I brought it up. I didn't know, right? But to be fair, it was something that I would do again because I didn't know, and it was a lesson I think people take for granted. Watch all your children in a new environment.
Excellent point.
Also, there was a time when there was a child sitting on a balcony, and there was no way I could have reached the child if they leaned back and fell over. So I had them go and get their parents, so I could tell the parents, hey, she was sitting on the balcony. Don't underestimate, monitor your children on things like that, balconies, ledges, please, staircases.
Yeah, we cannot stress too much on that. There's an incident, and this is a real scenario, where a family went to the beach, and several children, mommy said to daddy, I'm going to take X, well, John, I just call him John, to the washroom, you'll look after the others, and one of the child wandered into the sea and drowned.
Yeah.
So when it's your turn to watch children, don't be on your phone, don't read a book, watch the children.
Don't think the staff of the hotel or the lifeguards is going to do it for you, right? That's not their job. No. That's not their job. So next thing, people might think if it's not alcohol, it's not so bad because alcohol is illegal. Yeah, weed also, not just sleepiness. Don't smoke weed and drive. It might seem obvious, but people probably do it. If they drink and drive, they'll smoke weed and drive. But the political manifestos, all I'll say is this: they look detailed. I don't think, in my opinion, they are that detailed. They just seem like a list, a long list, nice, but What are the details of implementing the things in that list? That then is when we might be able to become details and assess it for what it is. That said, most political manifestos are not details, so it's not just a UNC problem. Business investors are risk averse, so what are they doing? They're investing abroad. They don't have to worry about taking the money out, and they don't have to worry about a market that has no growth, so they'll go abroad to invest. That's what the big corporations locally, local grown corporations are doing. And last thing, I'll just say it again, redistribution of Forex is only really not a big deal. It's not so a groundbreaking thing. It's moving the Forex from one spot to another, and it's moving the shortage from one spot to another. The issue is the shortage, not the fact that, oh, how it's being distributed. I understand we might not like it, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories about it, but in the long run, moving it around in a different combination ain't solving the actual problem. With that said, thanks to the callers, thanks to Inspector Callender for joining me once again.
Always a pleasure being here.
Folks, this is Talking on the WSN, the Content Capital, reminding you to make today a good day. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. And throughout your day, whoever you meet, never forget, it's nice to be nice. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.